Afternoon, everyone. The committee hearing of the Committee on Science and Technology, joint with Committee on Public Services and Finance is hereby called to order. May I ask my brother, Director Kilala, to lead us in prayer? Okay lang ba, brother?
Shall we all rise up? The great and heavenly Father, we thank you for this committee hearing of the Science and Technology Committee. We pray, Lord, for your wisdom and knowledge to be upon us all, that we may be able to work what is better for our country. We pray for your Holy Spirit to be upon us and guide us in all our undertaking. For us all these we pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Siguro for a short opening statement, I always like to start with the verse in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. No, there are three quick reasons why I like, talking about the verse. First, di ba, there's no plans pag walang vision eh. Di ba? How can you say you have a plan? You can't say, ito yung gusto kong bahay, pero wala kang vision kung ano yung bahay na yon. So, before the plan is the vision. And what I've been learning lately, before the vision, the purpose, di ba? So, in everything we're going to talk about today, and hopefully in the laws that we're going to craft, napaka-importante yung purpose nung pagpapaganda ng ating digital infrastructure, napaka-importante yung vision at yung plano. The second is because one of God's greatest gift to us is choice eh. 'Di ba? So sa young people, usually sa high school tinatanong ko kung maganda plano ni Lord sa atin, bakit ang daming problema, 'di ba? Bakit may teenage pregnancies, bakit may I just text my staff kasi they were talking in our group about the breakup. And sabi ko, I think everyone's talking about it, but sabi ko sa kanila, number one, they're real people and they're hurting. So pag-pray nyo and hindi ko na sinabing don't make jokes, but they got the point. And then I said, yes, I'm a fan. Para alam nila, no? But ang point ko po is that, bad things happen, including to good people. But it's because may choice tayo. So if God has a plan, the devil also has a plan, di ba? So that's why it's very important that government come together, klaro kung ano yung vision, klaro kung ano yung plan. And the third is that, now ano tayo eh, panahon ng sala sa init, sala sa lamig eh. Anything you say is either too much, too little, too kind, di ba? So my wife is used to being my best supporter and critic at pag may sinabi. Pero lately sinasabi ko, kahit naman anong sabihin ko, wala nang tama eh. Tumahimik ka, ba't ka tahimik? Maingay ka, ba't ka maingay, di ba? So the thing I like about the Jeremiah is for Muslims, Jews, and Christians, lahat sila acknowledge siya as a uh, prophet, di ba? And sino man ang magsasabi na walang plano ang Diyos para sa inyo. So as you know, na it's all over the news naman no, na the senators had dinner with the president, and I think he's very concerned about security, about potentials of the internet, the digital infrastructure, di ba? So hindi ko elaborate na, but obvious naman whether it's e-commerce, learning, e-consulta, he did mention ng konti yung nga about yung blocking yung international tools that we should have sa law enforcers natin and sa DOST, sa NTC, DICT, to make sure nga na kung may problema or may threat, di ba, we're up to it. So I'll ask the ComSec to do more of the talking today and introduce the topics. But and of course, sa DOST, siyempre, napaka-importante nung PhilVox, nung ating modernization, di ba? So, mamaya po. So, I won't keep you too long today. It's a Friday, December 1. Probably traffic na mamaya. So, let's try to finish by 4 o'clock. So, kung payag po kayo lahat, you can submit kung gumawa kayo ng 1,000 page na briefer or 100 page PowerPoint. Siguro for our process. Kasi the reality is whether it's the public who's listening to us now, the media, or even ako, you remember what? Pinakamarami, three of your most important points. Malamang one lang, di ba? So, feel free to emphasize what's the one thing, di ba, on your agenda or that has to be done. Number two, yung strength and weakness. So, halimbawa, kung sasabihin natin, magkakaroon tayo ng konting report about sa, for example, we're going to look at yung uh, sa nuclear power, and I thank Congressman Kuwangko for being, keep pushing that, and he was here last week. Ano yung number one threat? Ano yung number one strength? Nasaan tayo? Di ba? So, it's more like an 40-story elevator briefing, di ba? So if we were together in an elevator, first for your topic, feel free naman if you have more time than that, we can go up down the elevator, ika nga. But meaning, I think mas magkakaintindihan tayo kasi I also asked them about yung loss sa cybercrime, sa blocking. Sabi nila ganyan kakapal, sir. So, di ba? So, no use in discussing it and everyone listening kahit hindi mo topic to that. When in reality, it will be the technical working group and departments and the House and the Senate who will meet on the floor on it. Let's give people what yung idea. Then what we'll do, Comsec Jamie, what ang favor siguro, the more na makapal, the more na challenge tayo na may bullet points because we don't want to happen yung nangyari sa cyber libel. Remember, parang everyone was happy about it. Nung nilabas, everyone was complaining about it. Hindi naman sila maka-complain masyado, baka ma-cyber libel sila. Di ba? Kasi nandun na sa law na yan eh. So we do want to discuss it thoroughly, but we don't want to bore people to death. No. And we also don't want to, um, to waste valuable time. So help us not only get these things done, but find a way how to present it to in the most interesting way. And sa akin naman, so DTI was here, last but not the least, sa kinamayan ko here. And siyempre, ma'am, talaga naman sa consumer, di ba? Um, di ba? Faster internet. Kung pwede, let me stop with this, no? Lately, yung heart namin nung staff at core group ko is really on equal opportunity. And, di ba, if you go to, for example, France or even of EU, but of course, my war with Ukraine and Russia, but or parts of the US, for example, di ba? The difference between rural and urban is rural is more green. May ospital doon, may kuryente, may internet, may magagandang schools. In fact, ang gaganda ng mga estate, lalo pag yan ay let's say vineyard area, di ba? Sa atin ang kaibahan, pag urban, lahat ng amenities nandiyan, di ba? Magagandang school, magandang ospital, libreng uniforme sa school, kalye, etc. Of course, it's also congested, so marami din informal settler. Pero sa rural, basically, wala. Di ba? Walang 45% walang health center eh. Marami kung may internet, very spotty. Even yung ano. So, for me, of yung vision is we don't want the whole Philippines to be an urban jungle, eh, di ba? So, and the way to do that, of course, on the finance side is to give the rural areas an incentive to keep being rural. Cannot equate rural with being poor, di ba? So in fact, di ba sa other countries, or even sa atin pagka sobrang yaman na, gusto niyan ng maliit na farm niya, di ba? Pero hindi mahirap 'yon, farm ng mayaman. So pag pumunta ka halimbawa ng Pangasinan, Tarlac, Nueva Ecija, or even in Visayas, Mindanao, kitang-kita mo yung farm ng mahirap at farm ng mayaman. So since most of what we're gonna talk about is uh, infrastructure that you cannot see, 'di ba? So when you talk about nuclear, yeah, you can see the wires, but you don't really see the electricity. Tapos internet, 'di ba? Ganun din sa disaster resiliency. We see the radars and everything, but you don't really see the storms coming, or you don't really physically see the fault lines, no? So yun ang handicap natin as a group today na Kasi kung ano yan, kung hospital building, school building, kalye na may crack, ano yan, ang daling ipakita sa tao, sira yan, gawin natin, di ba? Um, Highway papuntang Baguio para 3 hours na lang. Ang daling ipaliwanag sa tao. But what we're talking about now, and the irony siguro is that the departments we're talking about now, DOE, DICT, DSWD, certain degree, DTI, pero it's getting better. But as far as the ICT, um, DOST, and DOE, you have the smallest budget, but actually the greatest potential uh, in terms of changing the country. So I leave it at that. Ma'am Jamie, can you read the topics, then recognize the guest, then kung sinong first speaker? Thank you and welcome everyone.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For this meeting, we have on the agenda all the Open Access in Data Transmission Act bills. So these are the Senate Bill number 183 by Senator Marcos, SBN 815 by Senators Gatchalian and Legarda, SBN 864 by Senator Poe, SBN 1213 by Senator Revilla Jr., SBN 1383 by Senator Zubiri, SBN 1611 by Senator Villanueva, SBN 1845 by Senator Tulfo, SBN 1876 by Senator Lapid, and SBN 2146 by Senator Estrada. We also have on the agenda, taking into consideration the House Bill number 6 by Representative Romualdez et al. Also on the agenda is the use of satellite-based technology for internet connectivity. We have SBN 814 by Senator Gatchalian and SBN 1380 by Senator Subiri. So for this meeting, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our
Ang grab na lang ng intention, mauna na ako. Ma'am ko okay lang sa consumer protection. Kasi nung minention ko to sa floor, ah nagsang-ayunan na yung mga senador. So I guess it's not a super widespread problem, but it's not an isolated problem. Kasi yung barangay namin sa Taguig, medyo sulok kami. So I live behind, my wife and I live behind Camp Magundiwa, right in the boundary of Sucat, Muntinlupa, and Bagumbayan, Taguig. And medyo urban poor yung area. So 1 month, so alam mo, last month, namatay yung internet ko mga 2 in the morning. Sinabi nila may problema. It didn't go back until 2 days. 2 days later, okay. Fourth, fifth day, namatay for a few hours. Okay for 3 days, namatay for 5 hours. Tapos ganyan. Pero yung singil sa akin, ganun pa rin. So, in behalf of everyone who's experiences something similar, I know sa Meralco, over the years, di ba? Mga refund, but kasi may nakatutok doon yung ERC, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, di ba? But sa inyo, anything from motorcycles to cell phones to ganyan, but particularly in the internet, and complaints like this.
Magandang hapon po, Mr. Senator and sa lahat po. For DTI po, Under the Consumer Act, meron naman pong delineation of functions, di ba? Meron pong tatlong implementing agencies. We have the Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, and the DTI. For DTI po, we have a no wrong door policy na kahit po hindi the jurisdiction is not clearly under us, pero we receive complaints. But if the complaint or issue is under the jurisdiction of PA or DOH or other agencies, we endorse it to them po.
Pag internet, kanino po yun? Sa
Pag internet
DICT
naman
or NTC?
po, we have a joint issuance together with National Telecommunications Commission. So meron din pong delineation of
Yeah.
functions doon. For DTI po, if the issue is on deceptive or unconscionable sales act or practices, sa amin po yun.
But specifically yung sinabi ko, if they're not getting the service, I mean, di ba, if it's 1 hour in 1 month or 3 hours in 1 month at regular service, I don't think anyone will complain. But if it's a regular disruption, then you're paying, di ba? Is there ano there? Kanya-kanyang complaint yun or is there a omnibus or comprehensive na pwedeng tignan? By the way, dadagdagan ko pa. Every time we finally, kasi I tell the people, wag niyo gamitin pangalan ko, wag niyo sabihin bahay ni ano to. But every time we finally get the technician there, pag tinetesting niya, yung actual nilang ginaranting speed, hindi yun yung speed nun. Tapos may kailangan daw siyang galawin. Once lang naman nangyari, mga 5 years ago na parang, sir, gusto mo galawin ko, mas mabilis pa. Pero hindi kami pumayag. Di ba? Once lang naman yon years ago. Mostly very faithful naman yung nag-aayos. But siguro 9 out of 10 times or hindi naman 9 times pumunta, mga 6 times pumunta. 5 out of 6 times nung tinesting niya, ah, hindi ano yung speed, no? I just ask this question because I think it will pique the interest of people and we know the problem is bigger than that, di ba? Yung infrastructure and everything. But at least sa complaining, who can they complain to or anong mas effective? Kanya-kanyang complain yun or omnibusly can you do a random survey and check, if people are satisfied? Or I'm willing to pay for it if you want to put it in Pulse Asia or SWH para makita. I mean, langit. I mean, here in the Senate, halos kilala naman namin yung ISP at the bigger ones. But the reality is talagang, especially ako as soon as I learned to watch YouTube and listen to me and on the iPad, talagang ano parang dark ages pag wala kang internet. Bumili pa ako ng backup na PLDT na yung sinasaksak lang. Mukhang pareho yung linya nun, so wala rin siya. So, kanino yun? NTC ba yun? Or what can we do na just to assure, kasi magpapasko eh. Parang experience ko pag winarning mo, gumagaling din talaga sila eh. Kahit hindi mo pa inimbestigahan eh.
May I, Mr.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and to the members of the committee and the other colleagues from the government and other guests. Yes, Mr. Chair, on the part of the NTC, we have a Consumer Welfare and Protection Division which handles these types of complaints. The complaints range from anything relating to the telco service, including the internet and data. And as soon as we receive these complaints, we endorse them to the telco companies for proper action. In so far as if there yung question po on an omnibus action, if there's a widespread report of massive outage of service, motu proprio the NTC calls the attention of the concerned telco and then we inform them to take the corrective action and then report to us the actions taken.
I think, Commissioner, it's less of massive, more of consistent. Ano, yung kasi parang kailangan ng raincoat yung mga wire nila kasi basta umulan nawawala. Hindi naman siguro, di ba? Hindi, walang biruan. Pag malakas ulan, dati di ba nung bata tayo, pag malakas ulan baka mamatay kuryente. Walang TV. I thought immune yung internet doon kasi nga yung wires mo lalo sa amin. Tatlo na yung nasa bahay ko eh. PLDT, Sky, Converge. Nagko-converge silang tatlong wala pagka ano eh. But I'm not complaining for myself. Anyway, since you have that group, baka we can sit down and have coffee and think about it. But think about just doing a a random Metro Manila and close to Metro Manila. Kasi 'di ba, I assume the best internet is in Metro Manila, 'di ba? So meaning kung dito mapatunayan na in 70-60% of the area regularly napuputol and sinisingil sila ng buo, then you can go outside. Or if you want to do the peripheral then na Bulacan, maybe San Pedro, Laguna, Binyan, 'di ba? But can you look into that kasi especially magpapasko. Ano talaga, marami pa rin kasing they do their assignments or they work sa internet, 'di ba? So apektado tayo. If anyone wants coffee, we have coffee there. I don't want to feel that I'm the only one partaking. So, Jamie, sinong gusto nating unang magsalita?
May we hear on from NTC and then the ICT
Okay.
for the open access.
Yeah. Basically open access, but if there's any few things you want on the record, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We haven't really prepared any opening statement. Uh, our technical team is currently attending po in fact, a World Radio Communications Conference in Dubai. Uh, and it is aimed at gathering yung globally harmonized frequency band so that the IMT and or other types of service relating to better internet will be harmonized in that conference. And on the part of the NTC, National Telecommunications, and on behalf of our Commissioner Ella Blanca Lopez, we would like to manifest our support for the passage of the open access bill, Mr.
So,
Chair.
since you support, parang obvious that it's doable, no? Ano lang
Yes.
yung challenge dito? It's more technical na.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we see lang po yung the provisions more on harmonizing the different versions of the draft bill. And then if we get a consolidated version po siguro, we can submit our more pointed comments and positions.
I commit to you na hindi ko kayo ididiin o hindi kayo, but have a version na siguro. Kasi
Yes,
kayo naman mag-implement eh, di ba? So kung pipilitin namin version namin, tapos hindi rin nyo ma-implement, magtuturoan lang tayo. So kahit sa technical working group, let's see yung ano nyo. Then siguro lang help us explain sa ibang authors if hindi version nila why. Tapos I'll be more than happy to go to them and explain it. But let's have a official Marcos administration version siguro. So that's between NTC and DICT. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. So DICT.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and colleagues from government. For the side of the DICT, we also do support the open access in internet services. This will actually support and encourage smaller ISPs for their own respective businesses and hopefully to expand our internet service in far-flung areas. It will also hopefully help lower the overall cost of internet here in the country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So same testimony, doable. May mga challenges lang.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's we believe it's doable, sir. We will be submitting our position paper, as you said, sir, in this Marcos administration. I think by December 5,
Sige.
we will be able
Yeah.
to submit some position papers.
The more that it can be harmonized among the key players like NTC, DIC, better for us. Para lang hindi kami mag-referee kasi nga, I mean, if this was a more legal rather than technical, makiki-referee kami, but it's more technical talaga. Meron pa on that topic? Wala na.
Um, for the small players, sir,
Yeah.
may we hear from Philippine Competition Commission
Yeah.
with regard to the
And after direct Dr. Tanate, if anyone wants to speak on this topic, just raise your hands. Sige, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, first, Mr. Chair, telecommunication is one of the priority sectors of the Philippine Competition Commission, and given we recognize the urgency to promote or foster competition in the telecom industry, and that's why we support fully the passage of this bill. And most of our contribution or inputs, Mr. Chair, were already considered during the 17th and 18th Congress. And there are just some refinement that we want to submit. And we already actually, Mr. Chair, submitted to your office last November 16, our position paper. And we just want to add, I think, there is a provision in terms of allocation and reallocation of frequency. And there's a limit of 15%. And we want to remove that because we are aware, or we know that frequency spectrum is a limited resource. And any movement in that frequency band, we should be vigilant that telco or a particular telco will not be able to dominate or securing or owning that frequency. So we propose that any movement should be notified to the PCC. But of course, our review should be within the prescribed timeline, Mr. Chair, in order not to delay also the.
No, thank you very much, sir, for that point. Very important point. So whether formally or informally, paki-alert na rin kami ng DICT at NTC if there are nga provisions that are either sensitive, whether sa legislator, sa business sector, or sa technical. Kumbaga landmine siya. So that mas easy din natin mapasa at mapag-usapan. Then siguro sa NTC later on, I mean, let's not go to the details now. Are there parts of the I remember kasi, I don't think it was this room, but when sino ba nanalo nun? Yung nung binili ng, di ba, Smart and Globe, and then pangatlo nun was, what was the, Sun Cellular, tapos nag-aagawan, tapos nanalo ang Smart, di ba? Smart was able to buy it. We had a hearing about that, eh. Si Senator Enrile, Senator Joker. It was an interesting conversation, but just like sa real estate developers na yung question ng land banking, binibili nyo pero hindi nyo man ginagamit. That question always came up, di ba? Pati sa energy, yung dun sa mga possible oil fields na kinuha nyo pero wala pa kayong pera to develop. Pakitignan nyo na rin, no, na so in the last 5 years, of course, nag-pandemic, but ano yung frequencies na nandyan? Sa akin, dadagdagan ko, hindi lang hindi ginagamit. They're not investing to eventually use it. Kasi if they know naman they're gonna use it and they're investing not to use it, that's good. Pero yung naka-reserve lang sa akin and then someone else is willing to invest and to use it, kawawa naman yung tao. But I know it's a valuable resource. Tama kayo, sir. So thank you for that point. So anyone else? Yes.
Yes, Senator Alan. On the part of ARTA, we welcome this new proposal. In the House, when we deliberated on the issue of the e-governance bill, these provisions or this proposal were also discussed vis-a-vis the e-governance bill. So I believe there is a possibility, even when there will be some readjustment or harmonization of the provisions of the open access. It has something to do with e-governance as well. But the open access of internet services could be treated on a standalone basis, I should say, because this will entail the private sector involvement. Just want to inform you, Mr. Chair, that the JMC or Joint Memorandum Circular 2023-01 has been issued already. And this is the implementing rules and regulations of Executive Order 32, is streamlining the permitting process of all telco infrastructures. So this will help this open access system right now. Opo, sa mga towers po. So lahat ng mga telco ngayon, mas mapapaikli na ho yung processing nila. And mas maganda po dahil hindi pa na ipapasa yung e-governance. Meron na po itong executive order na ipinasa ng Pangulo. And I believe later on this can be, in a way, be part of the open access bill eventually. Your
No,
Honor.
I'd like to thank you for that, Director. And I had the privilege of seeing a short brief on the Project Nehemiah when Jeremiah Bellica was a Director General ng ARTA. And yung nga, yung realization na pag streamline mo sa isang agency, pero hindi nag-uusap yung iba, hindi rin mangyayari. And then of course, we're just talking about national government, may local din. And being married literally and figuratively to our LGU, I do understand both sides, di ba? On one side, ah, hindi pwedeng may sarili kang mundo. On the other side, minsan dumadating yung national government, gawin nyo lang 'to, na may apektado talaga, 'no? So any other um, things that we can do that will really get things rolling. I told Brother Jeremiah, you know, minsan baka sa libro mo na mababasa 20 years from now yung acknowledgement that, it was something that got things going. But, you know, yun naman trabaho natin sa gobyerno, eh. Yes, Yusek, Crystal.
So, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity. This bill actually is very important for NEDA. The Philippine government recognizes the imperative to overhaul the digital infrastructure as highlighted by the call of the President during his 2023 State of the Nation address, where he said that digitalization is the call of today, not the call of the future, but of the present. It is here, it is needed, and it is needed today. So we just want to highlight that data transmission actually plays a key role in the Philippine economy. It enables information exchange, economic transactions, and social connection. Actually, the digital economy in 2022 contributed 9.4% of the nation's GDP. That totals 2.08 trillion. But however, despite the recovery after the pandemic in 2020, the digital economy share to the Philippine GDP has been decreasing. So this decline indicates that there is substantial untapped potential in the digital economy that could be realized through policies like this bill, the open access one. In addition, we would like to also highlight that the telecommunications sector plays a vital role in society. So from January 2020 to January 2023, internet penetration rates rose from 67% to 73%, underlining the growing importance of digital connectivity in the society. But the supply side of telecommunications has not kept pace with this demand. The industry is dominated by few major players, and that actually results in higher costs, lower speeds, and more limited coverage than what is seen globally. So if you look at our the access, the affordability, access, quality of the Philippines in comparison to our neighboring states, you see that Philippines is actually lagging behind. And we need this open access to open up the industry for competition that will benefit all Filipinos. So thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much for that. And I think you hit naman the nail on the head talaga na yun naman ang complaint ng lahat, whether personal use or for studying or e-commerce. So may I throw this back to whether the ICT, NTC, or to Saneda. So will this passage of this bill, you know, hasten the solution? Aside from this bill, anong kailangan nating gawin para nga, kumbaga, yung supply?
So, we note in the open access bill, there's actually two components there. You have the fixed broadband, but it also touches on the mobile broadband. So on the fixed broadband aspects, it opens up the possibility for internet service providers to actually lay down their own network because it eliminates the requirement for a congressional franchise. So if they would just get a certification from the NTC to operate and lay down the network, that will mean that there will be more players that will enter into the market that can provide the service. On the mobile broadband naman po, as ED Ken has said, it's very important that we have to what do you call that? Manage our frequencies better. So we need to have a spectrum management framework, and alongside with that, we have to identify the gaps, like what exactly, Mr. Chair, has you said, like the underutilized or the unutilized frequency that should be part of government, and all of these can be included in the provisions of the bill po.
So thank you for breaking it down that way. No, my encouragement naman is this: the Senate President has a bill, the Speaker has a bill, and the President has said it's important. So God willing, parang klaro yung sign sa atin na gawin natin to. So baka yun na lang ang hingin ko rin sa NTC, if you can submit to the committee before we wrap up, di ba? I mean, all these bills para sa floor man eh. Ano yung underutilized and unutilized na frequency? And then ma'am, one question doon. So you said we should have a spectrum management. Do we have, so administrative na yon or we need a law? or we
We
do have it and we just have to improve it?
Actually, Mr. Chair, the NTC has been managing the spectrum. If I think the question is there any a codified or a document within which you can see the
Mm.
frequency allocations, assignments? There's none, but the management and the framework itself, the NTC has been implementing that in accordance with the rules and regulations promulgated by the International ITU or the Telecommunications Union.
Last question on that. And I'm not finger pointing kasi last administration nangyari to, di ba? Napamigay yung mga frequencies, including yung sa ABS, DCMM, etc. But itong start ng administration na to, it wasn't a medium-term development plan. I forgot exactly what the name is. We passed something na ang sponsor si Senator Sani that has to do with the medium-term development plan. And nakalagay doon, di ba, na ibibid na yung mga frequencies rather than just allocate. So are we preparing for that or may rules na tayo dyan? Wala pa.
Insofar as on the assignment po, Mr. Chair, there are no fixed rules how to
Yeah.
assign frequencies, but including yung bidding po is also being looked at as one of the
Yeah.
possible ways of
Yeah.
assigning frequencies.
Well, I'll be frank about that because all Filipinos or most Filipinos believe na pag nag-assign tayo ng frequency, may kumikita. Di ba? So, having said that, it can be true, it cannot be true, it can be very true. But the point is this, sa medium-term financial framework, nilagay na. So, it's either we follow it or not. So, ako, let's dispel, di ba? That's why, I mean, to be fair sa agencies, naniniwala din ang tao pag congressional franchise, may kumikita din. So, it's also good yung sa bill na to na hindi mo na kailangan kumuha ng frequency. I mean, let's be frank about it. I'm talking about perception, whether it's real or not. And in politics, perception is sometimes more important than reality, di ba? So kahit anong sabi mo, walang kumikita dyan. Kung tingin nilang meron, di ba? Nandun yung distrust. O, pag sabihin mong, kung may kumikita man wala sa franchise, no problem kasi hindi mo na kailangan kumuha ng franchise. So ganun din sa frequency. We know how hard it is for NTC to allocate. But the bidding would be good kasi how can you argue with that? And kung may pera yung nag-bid, it almost assures you na may pera silang to invest, to put up the infrastructure, to use the, di ba? Oo, kasi may cost na sila eh. Di ba? Oo. Okay, anyone else on this topic? Sorry. Sir, I'll go to, yes. Dr. De Leon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon po sa mga kasama natin. For us at the OST-ASTI, we fully support the legislation regarding the open access in data transmission. Related po sa sinabi ninyo on the possible unused and underserved spectrum, on our end, being a research and development institute, sana rin po yung mas maging convenient for us sa R&Ds na magamit yung spectrum. Kasi po, admittedly, meron po kaming research projects that utilize the spectrum pero nahihirapan po kami. So nahihirapan po kami makamove forward simply because the current policies and laws really doesn't allow much about what to do with the spectrum. And per our experience, we are very much capable to develop and offer solutions to our countrymen. Of course, yung bill pertains to those commercial service providers, but we Filipinos can also do so. So we need more encouraging environment. So yun lang po. Thank you.
Let's do two things about that. Commissioner, can we put a group na kausap din ng DOST kung paano nga, di ba? To explore yung sinabi niya.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Sige.
In fact, we have been coordinating and collaborating with DOST, and we have a project together
Okay.
with DOST.
So that's one. Secondly, yung Advanced Science Technology Institute, dagdagan nyo ng group para Advanced Science and Technology Institute Group ASTIG. Kasi pag ASTIG, nasusunod. Oo. Pag ASTIG kasi parang bitin, kaya hindi kayo pinapakinggan. Pag ASTIG na kayo, pakikinggan kayo para.
Noted, Mr. Chair. Dagdagan ko lang po yung sinabi ni Sir. Yes po, may collaborative project po kami with NTC. We call that NetMesh. So equivalent po siya nung speed test kung familiar po kayo. But this one around, fully developed by Philippines.
But I get what you mean. I mean, di ba, yun naman problema parati ng researchers at scientists na bigyan mo kaming more access. But of course, the private sector and the regulators are always ganyan. But nagkakaintindihan tayo doon. So let's see how we can give and take. Kapitbahay ko sila eh. So, bahay namin, Bagong Diwa, DOST. So, 'di ba? ah, Begins at home talaga ang generosity. So, kailangan kong tulungan ng DOST. Sa, sorry, medyo
Sir, hi.
maano.
Joel Davao
Joel
from
Davao.
Philippine Cable. I'm representing the
Umupo kasi Davao ka.
Tama, sir. So I represent, sir, the small players, and we don't just support the bill, we long for this bill. One of the most important components na pag-usapan ng konti is the fixed line network where we are, right? The cable operators offer fixed line internet. And this problem for us now, and why we can't offer the service that we'd like to offer, is a bottleneck in the middle mile. It's not an often talked about segment because it doesn't affect anyone that's not an internet service provider. Ngayon, yung choices lang namin ay tatlo. And with that, yung presyo mataas. Now, with all of the major developments of the internet industry in the Philippines, ang dami ng submarine cable sa Luzon, malapit na yatang 20, ang dami na rin data center sa Pilipinas. But for us, lalo na po sa mamalayong lugar, katulad ko, I operate in Kabangkalan, Negros Occidental. Malayong layo po siya sa dat, isla pang Negros. So kung gusto ko ng data center, bibili ako ng middle mile. Tatlo lang yung choice ko. Now, in the current scenario, current licensing environment, kung may gustong pumasok sa middle mile business, kuha sila ng congressional franchise. And if you're going to get a congressional franchise, edi mag-end ka na, kinuha mo na yung congressional franchise eh. So with the advent of this bill, we expect that there will be more middle mile players, or even kaming mga cable operator, maglalatag kami ng middle mile facilities. And then we can bring the connectivity from the city to the province. So we really hope that this bill can happen so that we're able to do this. And if we see a dramatic drop in the price of middle mile connectivity, napakaganda po yung mangyayari sa mga malalayang lugar. Baka hindi na pumuntang syudad para
Sir,
magtrabaho.
both for me and for those listening So pag sinabing middle mile, so are you saying yung connecting dun sa submarine cables, or are you saying yung paglalatag nyo nung
Anywhere in the middle, sir. So anything that is connecting a last mile provider to, for example, a
Okay.
data center.
Kaya I asked the first, di ba ang Facebook naglagay, tapos supposedly 1 of 3 is for government sa atin? So nagagamit na yon? Hindi pa? Wala pa? Wala pa.
Yes, sir. Meta po. It's
Meta.
in the Baler landing station. Nandun na po siya. Hindi pa po nagagamit ngayon, sir. Hindi pa po tapos yung NBP phase 1 natin para
Okay.
po magamit.
So the other one is, I hear you na kung isa sa tatlo, di ba? Kasi any monopoly naman or duopoly or anything na mamimili ka, less competition. But is there a way for government na parang toll road din na maglalatag ang gobyerno, tapos kumabit kayo, magbayad kayo ng tamang
That's something so that would be attractive to us. It was mentioned in the earlier idea of the national broadband plan na baka magbebenta sila ng capacity doon.
Yeah.
And for us, as long as the service is good and the cost makes sense, game kami dyan, sir.
like toll road, di ba?
Oh.
So, gobyerno may lupa, pero walang perang gobyerno to make it. So, they ask someone else to build it, but then, we give them years na pagkakitaan siya. The reverse naman, di ba, is when someone doesn't want to build an airport or seaport doon kasi missionary, gobyerno magbibuild. Pero kung gusto mo Iran, ikaw magbabayad. So, there are many ways to do it, but I hear your point. Dapat everywhere in the country meron. And we've seen naman in the past, pag private sector nagpapatakbo, mas maganda talaga.
And I like the example of toll roads, Mr. Chair, because the government has oversight on the rates of toll. So we can make sure that these rates aren't prohibitive to business. So yes, I think that's something that would be very good.
Are we looking at that? May mapping ba tayo kung ano? So sorry to successive questions, but yun muna. Do we have a mapping ba kung saan halos walang digital infrastructure at saan meron? We do what?
On the part of the NTC, Mr. Chair, we have certain data and information insofar as the location where the telcos are present and also where they are absent. So, but we, insofar as the complete technical specifications of this presence, we don't have it.
How about sa DICT?
Sir, we have a component po under the UNDP partnership. It's called the Site Prioritization Tool. Essentially, sir, it has all um the components po, no, to for you to identify what barangay po ang walang
Yeah.
digital services.
So for example, if DPWH was here and I'll tell them, gusto ko makita mula Batanes hanggang Hulo, alin yung may national road. And then katabi niya, let's say, Department of Agriculture, tanungin ko, oh, mula Batanes hanggang Hulo, saan may farm to market road, saan wala? So if we ask you for the same, meron ganun ang DICT,
Yeah, it's
more or less.
more or less, sir. But marami po kasing categories na nandun, like, of course, yung population.
Yeah.
For certain barangay, for us to consider na i-prioritize, for example, free Wi-Fi, we have to check kung gaano karami po,
Yeah.
we have to
So for
prioritize.
someone who you go to pass the budget, I hear you, I get your point, and we won't blame you kami nagpasa ng budget. But I don't know if any one of you saw that clip sa Facebook, yung the Japanese were nagbabawas sila ng linya ng train. But they found out that there was still one family na may estudyante dun sa stop na yon. So they did not stop the train until she grew up because nga it was service, not ano, 'di ba? I don't know kung kwento lang 'yon, totoo, matagal na o hindi, 'di ba? So but 'di ba, the thing about kasi kuryente, it's like a gas station or it's like I mean, the thing about internet, it's like gas station, it's like air, 'di ba, na dapat kahit saan ka pumunta sa bansa, meron. I agree with you na kung limited saan yung free wifi, kung saan maraming tao, but yung actual na may internet at access. So I don't know if they still do that, but I remember nung when PAL first became the flag carrier, o sige, we'll give you the more lucrative routes, 'di ba? Manila Cebu, Manila ganito, Manila LA, Manila San Francisco, pero may missionary route ka, 'di ba? Ang ano ba, ang Globe at saka Smart halimbawa, may missionary ano ba sila dun sa mga probinsya, wala? May 'di ba? Oh,
They submitted po yung mga rollout plans po nila.
yeah.
So they identified certain areas naman po na unserved and underserved, and they're exerting efforts naman po to put up.
Yeah.
So,
But that's their goodwill.
yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Let's consider na we require them to have a missionary.
Yung draft provisions po dito sa open access will
We'll
somehow
address that. So, baka sir, ang pwede nyo ano sa amin, if they do that, you know, and hindi kayo ang magbi-build ng infrastructure, yun nga, how can we, kasi if they do build it, and then exorbitant naman yung price, it still doesn't help everyone, di ba? So, help us with those provisions, so how we can balance everything.
Definitely, sir.
Sa atin naman lahat, I think we agree on win-win, di ba? Magkakalye doon, magka-school doon, magka-internet doon, magkatrabaho doon, may taxes ang lower government, may trabaho ang tao, mawawalan ng insurgency, 'di ba? Kasi may gagawin. Kaya lang yung balance nga kasi kung panay rice fields naman yung iko-convert natin, wala naman tayong kakainin, 'di ba? So the balance there, but I think we all believe in the same thing naman, how to, you know, how to roll that out. So most welcome sir yung magiging submissions nyo. The same thing sir, kung may sensitive provision then outline it for us. I mean, it doesn't have to be specified that way. You can i-double underline nyo or whatever. Makukuha na namin yung hint na medyo controversial yan and we have to deal with it. Yes, you sir.
And just to add, following from Mr. Dabao's point, kasi in other countries, if you look at the telecommunications industry, they would usually impose significant market power obligations on those companies that are actually dominant or have market power. Kasi exactly the point where if you have market power, under what terms and conditions are you going to grant access to to a firm that is also competing with you at the downstream level? So that's why government has to make sure that there is fair and non-discriminatory access pricing and conditions in providing that access, so to speak.
You say it so simply, but we all know hindi ganon. No, I appreciate how you say it. But siguro one thing we can do is transparency. I mean, why don't we use the committee? Labas natin. 'Di ba? Eto kasi china-charge nila dito and ganyan, you know. Let's see, I mean, 'di ba? So kung kumbaga kung ako lang nagbebenta ng iPhone sa Metro Manila, Tapos pinablish nyo na sa Singapore, it's only $1,000. Sa Hong Kong, it's $950. Kay Alang Cayetano, it's 1,2. May konting pressure din yun eh. Diba? I mean, while we're working on this and we're getting there, help us how to, I mean, I'm not saying it negatively, I'm saying it positive. You said it very, like your name, crystal clear. Diba? Kaya lang nga, when we deal with the solutions, parang lumalabo bigla eh. Diba? May mga dahilan. Sabihin nung telcos, ito cost, sila kasi ang sila nag-invest, hindi naman kayo. So, ganyan, ganyan. Yeah. Ladies first, tapos we'll go from my right to left.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Grace Mirandilla Santos from Better Internet
Hi.
PH. We are representing the civil society organizations, and I'm proud to mention here that 10 organizations have actually signed a joint statement of support for the passage of the Open Access Bill, including the largest and most prominent groups from the business sector, the ICT industry, and civil society. We have provided the committee a copy of the joint statement. I just would like to name the 10 organizations who are not here, but well, one of them is here. So the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, PhilExport, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, Internet Society Philippines Chapter, the FinTech Alliance for FinTech Solutions and Digital Payments, the PCTA as well, the National ICT Confederation of the Philippines, the Foundation for Media Alternatives, Democracy.net.ph, and Better Internet PH have all signed this statement of support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very encouraging. Thank you for that. Who's raising his hand? Dr.
Mr. I just want to inform that actually the PCC conducted a market study on the wholesale and retail market of telecom, and one of the uh, problem or issue that we've uncovered uh, why we have poor telecom services is because of lack of infrastructure, and I think that is connected to the comment of Mr. Joel and the comment of Mr. Yusek Crystal also. And you're right, Mr. Chair. Actually, the recommendation in that study is to have transparency, because we know that these internet and international gateway facilities where internet is goes through and for the Philippines from outside from international. So this is controlled by two giants, and they are the one providing these bandwidth to a small value-added services and internet service providers. And you're right that I think we need transparency in that transaction. So that portion of transaction between the large and the large players and small players should be maybe regulated, or some provision should be included in the proposed bill to have transparency. Yes, Mr. Chair, that's
Yeah, kasi as Mr. Davao said nga, kasi sa toll, di ba, they're only allowed a certain uh, return. Kaya minomonitor tapos ina-approve. Pero dito nga kasi dahil free market. Having said that, just a perspective, just something to think about. Dati kasi walang pera Pilipinas eh. So when Smart and Globe and Sun nag-invest, so syempre you can make your money back. I don't know how much the last few years, but before nung minomonitor ko yung income ng Smart at Globe, it was like $1 billion between the two of them, more or less, di ba? More or less, so 25B each. But just as a perspective, for the last 2 years, almost 1 trillion pesos ang gastos natin sa DPWH for infrastructure. So kung dati, sa kita pa lang ng Smart and Globe, 50 billion, they didn't put in naman 50 billion sa infrastructure. But they had to do it because government wasn't. But now with a 1 trillion budget um sa DPWH, you get 10, 20, 30 for that for digital infrastructure. 'Di ba? Hindi na makaka-dictate yung dalawa kasi kaya naman nakaka-dictate to be fair to them naman, sila nag-iinvest. Now, is it too much or hindi? That's uh, a debate of capitalists and those against capitalism all around the world, di ba? Having said that, sino nagsasuffer yung consumer? So something to think about na for DICT, NTC, DOST, DTI, all those who wish na we have more money for infrastructure. We have. Kaya lang nandun lahat sa flood control. Uh, uh, so, next.
Mr. Chair, Eric Paringit po of the DOST, Philippine Council for Industry, Energy and Emerging Technology Research and Development. Kami po yung mga nagmo-monitor ng mga R&D projects. Na-express na po kanina ni Director Franz about the need to allocate certain levels of leeway for researchers to actually develop new technologies that makes use of the spectrum. Pangalawa po yung spectrum management. Actually, nag-draft din po kami ng parang bill. Well, it was written in a form of the tawag namin doon, spectrum policy reform for the allocation of certain parts of the spectrum for certain applications, including the use of the TV white space, yung mga hindi ginagamit nga na TV frequencies.
May nag-file na ng bill o wala?
Pinasa po namin actually sa
Yeah.
DICT.
Give us a copy if you want.
Yes.
Pwede
Sige.
naman natin pass whether sa same or ano.
Yes po. And then na po namin dun sa bill na yon that the certain parts of the spectrum, even if it's already allocated for commercial applications, be allowed to be used by for two purposes. One is for disaster events. Halimbawa po kung nag-down ang ating telco at kailangan natin gumamit ng communications network, that small operators of that transmit data be allowed to use the spectrum even if it's already allocated. The second use is for educational purposes. Alam naman natin na nung panahon ng pandemic, nagkaroon ng kigap on transmitting, say for example, educational materials that are actually digital. Kaya lang dahil walang telco dun sa lugar nila, hindi nila may transmit yun din. So sabi namin dun sa bill, baka pwedeng itong dalawang main applications na to ay payagan. And then siguro po pangatlong hindi pa nababanggit ay yung paggawa rin tayo ng provisions for spectrum policy on satellite services. Kasi unlike yung mga nilalatag na kable or put up na cell site, we can regulate kasi they're located here. But if you have satellite services tapos pero VSAT na dish, pwede sila mag-receive ng satellite anytime, anywhere, and anyhow. Ibig sabihin, all you have to do is to have that equipment in place. So maganda rin pong siguro of course NTC and DICT are in a better position to actually put in place some key measures to allow, say for example, the likes of Starlink. Paano kung maiba pa, and paano kapag ito ay will be in conflict, for example, with local frequencies that are already allocated within the same spectrum. Thank you.
Very important yun kasi nga may dalawang bill tayo. Senator Gatchalian at Senator Zubiri sa satellite-based technology. At saka, mapapansin mo, di ba, India at saka China talagang nagsa-step up sa use of technology sa space. So, sino ba dalawa pinakamagaling sa negosyo sa buong mundo? Indians and Chinese. So, they know something we don't. So, I really think we should look into nga yung use of that. Go ahead, basically.
Yes, sir. Coming from that, the DICT actually has been procuring VSAT services po, no? These are geosatellites, geostationary satellites po ito. And just recently, yung ating last procurement, we have successfully procured low Earth orbit satellites. And on top of that, sir, we are also in discussions with the medium Earth orbit naman, no? Si Gio kasi nandun sa taas, si Leo nandito sa medyo malapit na sa atin. And we're now in talks with a provider po in the middle naman, which we like to call the sweet spot, no? Hindi siya ganun kalayo, yung latency niya is okay na rin po. I mean, yung transmit ng data is maganda na rin. So hopefully, sir, we will have the report on that, and maybe next year ma-include na rin po natin sa ating procurement, specifically for the provision of free Wi-Fi. I agree po with the good gentleman that satellite services po talaga ginagamit natin to provide internet services sa far-flung areas, Mr. Chair. In remote islands na may communities na bibigyan po natin sila ng
I think
internet.
kahit sa election, no, pag walang VSAT din ang ginamit ng COMELEC for some of the
I
machines.
think so.
and,
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
So thank you very much. Very interesting discussion. But as I said, technical. So let's put it together. Let me know if the Senate can help in any forum to popularize it. But I guess very few people watch actual hearing on technical, diba? But I do know that between all of you, you have very interesting presentation, videos, especially sa mga launching. So if we can help, whether the Senate or the City of Taguig, di ba? Maraming mga ano dun eh, nagkakaroon ng special events, no? So, anyone else on this topic? Or can I ask permission to move? Okay. So, we'll finish the technical side sa technical working group. We'll start drafting the committee report. But yun nga, if everyone can give us three things, di ba? Yung kung ano version nyo, then just some bullet points kung if you think there are some controversial issues, and then just some notes on if let's say katulad sa 11 yung bill sa Senate, kung may pagkakaiba, help me lang to explain if we chose one version over the other. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll have a 2-minute break so that we can get our speakers on PHIVOLCS modernization. Then after, we'll deal with the Philippine Atomic Energy Regulatory. I like having hearing sa Christmas kasi napaka-smooth lang eh. So, Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We'll suspend for 2 minutes. PHIVOLCS family, and we'll have a short presentation daw po, no? Um, I just like to outline three things, no? Number one, hindi ko po i-word for word, but ang ating majority leader, I'll put into the record yung kanyang opening statement, and ini-emphasize niya yung parati din ini-emphasize ni Secretary, di ba, na pagka may disaster, lahat tayo sinasabi, pagandahin natin sistema, let's put in money, let's hire the right people, and then pag good times, nakakalimutan natin. So the second point I want to make is I don't believe in accidents. So I believe yung career ng ating secretary and being there precisely. And eto siguro ay matuturing natin na baby niya, no, itong modernization bill. So I think we should really give it all the efforts. And then thirdly, I don't think there's a conflict between praying, di ba, that God forbids disasters that are coming. But yun nga, we can't keep praying walang disaster, then we keep destroying naman the environment, no? So walang conflict yung praying and then doing what we can, 'di ba? So and part of doing what we can is strengthening PhilBox. So I'll just ask the ComSec to recognize our guests, and then I'll give you the floor pati sa inyong presentation. We have coffee on the side, so anyone please we'd like to make the hearing as comfortable as possible sa inyo na mga saan ba office ngayon ng PhilBox? Sa UP, okay. Kasi kayo malayo-layo sa amin. Kapitbahay ko kasi ang main office niya, di ba?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the Department of Science and Technology, we have Undersecretary Dr. Leia Buendia, Assistant Secretary Dr. Diana Ignacio, the PHIVOLCS Director Dr. Teresito Bacolcol. For the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, we have Dr. Valerie Ann Samson. For the Department of Budget and Management, we have Attorney Tricia Baraan. For the NEDA, we have Mr. Rosauro De Leon. For the Bases Conversion and Development Authority, we have Ms. Jocelyn Cañones. And for PAGCOR, we have Attorney Arnold Ferdinand Salvosa. That's all for now.
Take note
Mr.
lang
Chair.
kaka-report lang ng PAGCOR na napakaganda ng inyong koleksyon.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Dr. Bacolcol.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Okay, allow me to present to you the PHIVOLCS modernization plans. Next slide, please. Okay, so everyone knows that the Philippines is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, and from time to time we experience or jolted by strong earthquakes, like what happened last November 17 in southern Mindanao. We also have volcanic eruptions, and we have active faults. So currently we have 175 active fault segments capable of generating light to major earthquakes. And we also have 24 active volcanoes and 27 potentially active volcanoes. Next slide, please. So why do we need to modernize? Next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we have 24 active volcanoes, 27 potentially active volcanoes, and out of the 24 active volcanoes, only 10 volcanoes are monitored, and out of the 10 monitored volcanoes, only 2 have complete monitoring system. So this would be Taal volcano and Mayon volcano. And as you can see in this diagram, out of the 10 active volcanoes, from the 24 active volcanoes that we have, only Mayon and Taal have complete monitoring instruments. Next slide.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
I won't keep interrupting, but more or less lang, for you to have complete equipment sa isang volcano, mga how much yun? Ballpark lang. You can come back to it later.
5 billion.
5
5 billion.
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 Sige po, sir.
Okay? And
Sir, I'm listening, may monitor lang dito. So you might think I'm not looking at.
okay. So, okay, now let me give you some statistics of what would be the human and economic impacts if an unmonitored volcano would erupt. So, for example, this is Kabalian volcano in southern Leyte. It will affect a population of 241,000 people, and southern Leyte has a total GDP of 41 billion. And if it erupts, around 30 airports will be affected because of. Next slide, please. Okay, so as of 2019, Taiwan, which has a smaller land area compared to the Philippines, has around 194 seismic stations. On the other hand, Philippines, which has almost 10 times the land area of Taiwan, has only 123 seismic stations. We would like to target 300 seismic stations so that the density would be one station per 1,000 square kilometer. Next slide. So why do we want to add more? So this is to increase the detectability and location capability of our seismic network for small earthquakes, especially for faults that have no or that would exhibit low seismicity prior to big events. An example of this would be the West Valley Fault, which we know is very much active but has low level of earthquake activity. Another reason is to be able to reveal traces of active faults with no clear surface manifestations. Next slide.
And sir, tama
Yes,
ba
sir.
ako? Pagka na-reveal yan, then you can guide yung mga buildings or yung building officials kung ano yung pwede o hindi pwede or yung quality ng i-build nila,
Yeah,
di ba?
that's right. So ang importante is we know the trace of the fault so that they would be advised. Yung sa PHIVOLCS, ang recommendation namin is that no building should be constructed on top of an active fault. No uh, building for human settlement.
Yeah.
So
I think pwede within a few meters.
5 meters from both sides of
Yeah, and
the
then,
trace of an active
di ba,
fault.
the taller ones may mga technology na yon, di ba? Weather
That's right.
roading.
That's right.
But tama ba, sir? But of course, if you do not know na may fault doon,
Yun
then the
yung-
building official will give the building permit, di ba?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So we really have to know the where that the active faults are located. Next slide. Okay. So now let me show you the number of fatalities in the event that a magnitude 7.2 earthquake will occur along the West Valley Fault. So as of 2016, the total number of casualties in Metro Manila and nearby provinces will be about 48,000 people. That would be the casualties if there's a magnitude 7.2 earthquake. Um, pakibal- Pakibalik lang. Previous slide, please. Anyway, okay. So yun yung statistics if there's a magnitude 7.2 earthquake um, along the West Valley Fault. Next slide. Next slide. So in our country, 66 out of the 82 or 80% of the provinces are exposed to tsunami hazards, which is not surprising because archipelagic tayo. There are 832 coastal municipalities, 25 coastal cities, and 62% of the Philippine population are in the coastal municipalities or cities. Currently, we only have 29 existing sea level monitoring stations for tsunami detection. We establish at least 50 more tsunami stations with deposits if this bill will be passed into law. And there have been 40 tsunami events in the last 400 years. This means there's about one tsunami event every 10 years. Next slide, please. Okay, so we
Sir.
need to establish that. Yes, sir.
One question lang on that previous slide. Di ba nung nag-Yolanda, parang nabulaga lahat dun sa storm surge kasi ang alam talaga ng Pilipino, tsunami.
Mm.
So, etong sea level monitoring stations for tsunami, meron din bang pang-detect ng surge? Well, can you, I mean, I'm coming from ignorance
That's right.
talaga.
That's right.
So, can you help people understand that? Or what can we do sa bill mo to help nga dun sa storm surges? Or we just really prepare for it?
we really have to for this one can only be used if there are changes in the sea level. So for storm surge, hangin na yun, mukhang mahirap ma-detect with the sea level monitoring station.
So sa storm surges, basta nag-alert kayo na strong winds,
Yeah, they have to
mag-assume na
prepare.
tayo
That's
na
right, that's right.
pwedeng magkaroon ng, di ba? Unlike tsunami na you can actually, I think all around the world na yan, no?
Mm.
Nag-alert na yan pagka.
Okay. So previous slide. Okay, so this one. So again, as I've mentioned, we need to establish around 50 more stations for tsunami detection. Develop effective warning systems and install sensors offshore to close, especially to areas with probable tsunami generators. And there are currently 28 provinces, at least from the hazards of active volcanoes. And next slide. Next slide. Okay, so there are currently 28 provinces at risk from hazards of active volcanoes, and out of the 24 active volcanoes, 21 have incomplete hazard maps. Next slide, please.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
how much more or less, ma'am, kaya ako dun sa finance nyo, kaya ako tinatanong, I'd like people to understand na hindi ganun kasimple, may cost talaga. And then favorite namin si Attorney Baraan kasi tatanungin natin mamaya kung may pera. And then gagawa tayo ng plan. So more or less, sir, for a complete hazard map, what's the ballpark we're looking at? Diba? So if we're saying, so ilan po, sir, ang incomplete?
21 incomplete hazard maps. So ang kailangan namin dito would be people to work on hazard mapping. For our tsunami hazard mapping project, only one person is doing the hazard mapping for tsunami.
So people and equipment then?
People and equipment. So this bill would include augmentation of our staff, number of staff, also augmentation of our equipment.
Yeah. But for example, sir, di ba like yung 5 billion for volcano, we're not proposing naman na sabay-sabay lahat yun, di ba?
5 years po yung ano namin.
5 years.
5 years. And then for
sir, 5 years or sooner, no? I mean, if they give us the money, why not, di ba?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So for potentially active volcanoes, there are 17 provinces at risk, and all of these potentially active volcanoes have incomplete hazard maps. Okay. So next slide. Okay, for earthquake hazard maps, only 38 out of the 82 provinces have complete earthquake hazard maps. The rate of generation of hazard information is slow or delayed because it is the same group of people who conducting hazard mapping and research, and there's also the same group of people rendering services. For example, if there are earthquake events or if there are volcanic eruptions, then they have to go to the field and do hazard investigation. And it's the same people who are also doing hazard assessment, help LGUs review their comprehensive land use plans, and again, responding to earthquake and volcano emergencies. Okay, next slide. We are also conducting capacity building for provinces. Currently, only 45 out of 82 provinces are trained on site-specific information about volcano, earthquake, and tsunami impacts. Next slide. Okay, so these are the provinces with PHIVOLCS facilitated trainings conducted for teachers, different modules for elementary and high school based on K+12 curriculum. So as you can see, there are still gaps, and more trainings are still to be conducted to close these gaps. And with this, we need to have more people to be working on these things. Next slide. Okay, so I would just like to briefly mention a PHIVOLCS product, which is GeoRisk,
and how it contributes to the Philippine engagement with the World Bank. Okay, so between 2020 to 2021, the Philippine government availed of a policy loan amounting to 500 million US dollars. The fund was used to finance government response efforts to various large-scale disaster events in 2019 and in 2020 and during the COVID-19 pandemic. Among the prior actions or policy reform conditions that the Philippine government through the Department of Finance committed to the World Bank would be to engage at least 5 agencies and at least 100 LGUs to use the Jurisk platform, which was developed by PHIVOLCS. Another policy loan amounting to 500 million US dollars was again availed by the Philippine government from the World Bank in 2021. The funds were used by the Philippine government in its response efforts for Super Typhoon Odette and Typhoon Paeng. And again, PHIVOLCS was assigned to deliver one of the performance indicators in order for the Philippine government to help secure the loan. And there's also another policy loan this year involving $500 million or from 2024 to 2026. And again, PHIVOLCS through the juries is being volunteered to fulfill 2 of the prior actions. Okay, so next slide, please. Next slide. Now, who provides information and maps that are used in various PHIVOLCS applications, including the Jurisk? The maps and other information are being populated by our scientists from PHIVOLCS. And now, in order for us to continue populating these platforms, as well as continue with our mapping efforts, we need to have more technical staff to bring, we need to have more technical staff, which would bring me to my next slide. Okay, so currently almost half of PHIVOLCS staff is employed as contract of service staff or cost staff. We need additional plantilla positions for the following reasons. First, we have new functions since the creation of new positions under the rationalization in 2004. There is an increased demand for PHIVOLCS services, information educational campaigns, hazard assessment, hazard and risk assessments, and we also have expanded our volcano and earthquake monitoring networks from 64 seismic stations in 2004 to 123 at present, and therefore we have more data to process. We are also generating earthquake and volcano hazard maps. So there's no modernization. It will probably take several decades to install the number of ideal stations and several years to generate hazard maps for all provinces and volcanoes. Hiring of temporary staff is a big help, but this is not sustainable. What happens here is that we hire, we train them, and then they leave, and then the cycle is repeated. So we really need more plantilla positions to remedy this problem. So what do we expect after modernization? Next slide. So we would be able to install 300 earthquake monitoring stations, which would densify our current network and will help us plot with accuracy the location as well as the depths of the epicenter of our earthquake, especially for earthquakes that may generate tsunamis, as well as for us to be able to plot active faults with no surface manifestations or faults that would exhibit low earthquake activity prior to big events. We're also hoping that all of the 24 active volcanoes will be monitored, with the 8 most active volcanoes with complete monitoring systems. Next slide. We are also looking at additional geologic hazard maps in the provincial scale. Likewise, with the modernization comes with more staff to deal with more stakeholders. And we're also hoping for a new and permanent building with the state-of-the-art facilities. Currently, we are paying a UP demand 27 million pesos a year. When we first moved to this building in 1997, there were only around 250 employees. Now we are already close to 450 staff, including the cost staff. So we really need a bigger space. With or without the PHIVOLCS modernization bill, PHIVOLCS will remain to be at the forefront in the study of earthquakes, volcanoes, and their related hazards. The PHIVOLCS is committed to perform its mandate, notwithstanding the limited resources that we have. Rest assured that every single staff of PHIVOLCS, plantilla or otherwise, is performing his or her functions with the highest degree of professionalism. But PHIVOLCS is in high hope that with the support of our lawmakers and other stakeholders, the PHIVOLCS modernization bill will soon be passed into law. So in the end, it's our countrymen who will benefit most from the passage of this bill. Thank you.
Sir, saan ang possible new P-box building?
We're hoping na dito sa Metro Manila, we're actively looking for a lot. But doon sa bill, nakalagay din po doon sa Tarlac.
Tignan nyo rin yung kaliwa nyo, sir, kasi maraming lote sa Tarlac yan, maraming lote sa Fort Bonifacio, Taguig yan. Baka sa malayo pa tayo tumitingin, sir. Nandyan lang pala sa tabi niya.
Support po.
But, sir, one quick question kasi self-explanatory naman and I really appreciate putting it together so people will understand. There's been some criticism with so last year, when I say some criticism, some came from me. Kasi napansin ko sa DPWH, nagpapantay na yung new roads sa maintenance. So sabi ko, may mali ba tayo sa pagme-maintain ng road? Because dapat malayo yung maintenance sa new, especially since most of the gastos for new roads was the last 10-15 years lang. So bago-bago pa yon, no? Secondly, di ba nung una, obvious naman bakit sa Central Luzon may pagbabaha because hindi ginawa yung from the dams, they were supposed to be for irrigation, for electricity, but for flood control. Hindi ginawa yung sa flood control, no? But yung nangyari lately sa Bulacan, so my point is, parang nagiging reactionary. Saan may baha, doon tayo gumawa ng flood control. So, will all of this hazard mapping aid everyone doing construction, including our new roads, in where to build, where not to build, where to put more cisterns, or where to fix and everything, no?
Yes, sir. In fact, ginagamit itong mga hazard maps natin ginagamit ng mga LGUs when they prepare their comprehensive land use plans.
But not the national government pa.
We directly, DPWH, for example, would ask information from us
Now and
about
then.
the location of the faults and binibigyan namin sila ng information.
Kasi i-relate ko lang, no, na one thing that happened the last 2-3 years is from 700 billion, 1 trillion na yung infra. Diba? So, meaning, if we say, Ma'am Tricia, abot din sa ating mga bossing sa DBM, diba, na, of course, sinong ayaw na may massive build talaga. But I'm just saying, kung 1 trillion ka sa DPWH, na 250 billion doon, 300 billion, flood control. Pero if you spend 20, 30, 40 billion and modernize, and they have a map where not to build, which one, which lakes to protect, which river, you might not need 250 billion in flood control in the future. Diba? Kasi nga, precisely you know how to balance everything. So, I don't doubt DPWH is doing the best it can. They want to build, but parang I think we're neglecting the science. So, nangyayari, reaction after reaction, palaki ng palaki yung budget, pero actually, tinatabunan lang natin yung maling gawa dun sa isa. And when I say maling gawa, this is over the last 50 years. It's not naman one administration or one person, di ba? And it's also an effect of massive urbanization. So when we talk about Bulacan kasi, Bulacan is not the same Bulacan 40 years ago, di ba? Na karamihan, marami pang farmlands noon. It's really highly urbanized. Sir, any is there any challenges dito sa passing it, or it's just the 5-year budget lang talaga?
For House, they're very supportive of this bill, and of course, our senators also are also supportive of this bill. So wala.
So let's ask attorney, so 5-year, so pinag-aaralan na ba ng DBM? Parang kaya ba on a 5-year or still being reviewed?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Based on the discussion po ngayon, it would be 24 billion per year po. So, I think
depende po yan sa magiging priorities ng NEDA rin. Since yearly naman po meron tayong
Yeah.
budget priorities.
Actually, parang I read your mind or you read mine kasi kanina nandito NEDA. And when you were talking about faults, di ba napakagaling dyan talaga ng Japan eh. So aside from World Bank, baka borrowing from the Japanese is also. So when they say naman 5 year, parang naman military, di ba? It could be a combination between money from the GAA from taxes and it could also be ODA or could be other loans, no? Tama ba?
Yes po,
Yeah.
Sen.
So siguro yun lang, from the DBM lang, before we finalize the bill, give us a better sense na kaya bang 5 years o 7 years yan. And then, di ba parang sa military, may tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So that, um, uh, director kasi, intindi ko pagkaintindi ko lang kasi I wasn't part of the planning, but in the Duterte cabinet, I was listening and looking at it. Parang they present a vision, then they present a whatever 5, 10 year plan military, then revise it. So kung napalaki yung role at yung 5 year naging 3 year, they revise it, dadagdagan. Pag medyo naluma yung technology or iba yung needs, so like ngayon, it's really more the West Philippine Sea, so they're going more towards the Navy, di ba? Then nagkaroon ng interest sa submarines, pero parang may studies din, baka masyadong mahal. So it's a series of revisions din. But meron more or less ginaguarantee yung gobyerno yearly. So you also know what you will get, no? Kasi I mean, I don't think anyone will object. Ito nga yung kay Senator Villanueva strongly supporting. I just don't want na we pass a specific 5 year, then we don't give you the money. Di ba? So ako, mas gusto ko pang truthful na mukhang mas feasible ang 15 billion a year at 7 year to. Di ba? Rather, kasi kahit naman 5, 7, we'll finish it. But kung kaya talaga ng 5 years, then the last point, sir, this probably is more for the Department of Finance. I remember years ago, I think I don't know if it was the time ni President Pinoy. I was telling the DOST nga na kung titignan mo yung health department, for example, of course, si Senator Pia din ang tumulong, but nag kasi nila, nagkakaroon sila ng earmark sa ibang revenue generating measures. So for example, sa sin tax, meron diretso sa health. Kasi if we can find saan tax or fees na may diretso din sa inyo, it will also help us long term, 'di ba? Kasi hindi naman tayo, I mean, usually frown ang Department of Finance sa earmarking pag directly related, 'di ba? So directly related kasi yung smoking sa lung cancer. Eh. So if you say you get from smoking this amount for health, pumapayag naman sila. So for me, something to do with siguro building permits din kasi lahat naman yan has to do with ano, just to throw the idea sa inyo. And this is for our finance people, but for me kasi pagka meron recurring, 'di ba like sa airport eh, 'di ba? So kung meron silang fees, then hindi sila hingi ng hingi sa gobyerno kasi yung nga ang heart ko nasa DOST din at nakita ko nga na although tumataas yung budget, talagang pahirapan kumuha ng budget eh. So we should find a source na magaan sa kanilang 'di ba kasi like one building now na 30 floors is easily ₱1 billion. So kung sasabihin mo diyan 500,000 or 1 million goes to DOST for ganito ganyan. It might be additional cost, it might not be, I don't know. We'll consult the associations, etc. But I'm just saying, uh, it could be a more sustainable way of funding, continually funding, diba? And with climate change, yung monitors nyo ngayon is with present challenges, but it changes every year. Yeah. Sige. Anyone else from the group?
Sir, yung
Yes,
just
please.
yung nasabi ko yung 5 billion, it's for the total equipment outlay for the modernization. So
Okay.
one volcano, yung one volcano, yung complete setup would just be around 1.5 million.
Okay. So 5 billion for all the
5
equipment.
billion for all the equipment for 5 years.
Kung 5 billion na, baka kaya ng 1 year yun.
5 billion.
Yeah.
5 billion for 5
Yeah.
years. Let's say.
Again, I am one out of 24. We have more than 300 members of Congress, etc. But I'm just saying, diba, if you have 1 trillion for infra, but the 5 billion can actually guide the infra and save money, why not? Diba? So let's just weigh it, and I'll make sure no na as far as the senators they're updated dito, and then help us lang sa kasi hindi pwedeng ganyan kahaba yung presentation sa sponsorship. No, but there's so many good points na let's see how to do it lang, 'di ba? Or kung tatlo kaming magso-sponsor, hatiin natin into three so that they can show it then or something. Kasi I think, everyone should see the major points na including yung sinabi niyo director na yung example niyo dun sa isang volcano na ilan airports ang magsasara, 'di ba? Hindi namin naiisip 'yun eh, 'di ba? So it has to be something we're always parang kung alam lang natin yung Yolanda, eto ginawa natin. But kayo naman baliktad. Marami kayong alam. Kaya lang hindi napapansin until it happens. So let's use the sponsorship, the period when we sponsor this bill to ano. No? Oh. So, Comsec, we can pwede technical working group na for a committee report. Oh. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll have a short break and siguro a Christmas picture. Uh, Pakikamusta na lang kay Secretary. I think he's in an official, ano na sana. Yeah. We'll suspend, tapos sila din ba yung nuclear? Yeah. So yung, oh, kung okay lang po sa inyo, tapusin na natin nuclear para isang picture na. Sige, ayun, okay. Ayan. Hindi naman maana. Okay. Yes, Director Samson. Ang pinakamalakas ay Samson, kaya sa iyo ang nuclear.
Good, good morning, Mr. Chair, Senator Cayetano, and also to Yusek Bandia, Sec Ignacio, and to all my colleagues in the DOST and other government officials who are here. I will now be presenting on the Philippine Atomic Energy Regulatory Authority Bill. Next slide, please. The second is the second one. Yeah. So this bill aims to establish the Philippine Atomic Energy Regulatory Authority and providing for a comprehensive legal framework, nuclear safety, security, and safeguards in the utilization of nuclear energy in the Philippines and appropriating funds thereof. So we would like to emphasize when we say nuclear energy in nuclear parlance, it's just the energy that is coming from the nucleus. And this energy can be used for many applications, not only for power applications, but even for agriculture and medicine and industry. So that's why the term is nuclear energy, which is the energy coming from the nucleus that can be used for many other applications. Next slide, please. Okay, so this bill aims to address three important points, and that is that PNRI for the longest time has a dual mandate, which is to promote and regulate the use of nuclear and ionizing radiation from nuclear and radioactive materials. And currently, there are two regulatory agencies regulating the use of ionizing radiation for medical and non-medical applications, and that is the DOT PNRI and DOH FDA CDRRHR. And the gap identified in the existing law, which is RA 5007, aims to enhance what is already in RA 5207 on nuclear security and safeguards, which will aim to meet the obligations that we have in current international legal instruments that the Philippines has already acceded by. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so PNRI, which was formerly PAEC, has both the dual mandate of promoting and regulating in the past 50 years. And as you see in the PNRI organizational structure, we have 5 divisions. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We have 5 divisions, and 3 of those divisions is for promotion, and we have 1 division for regulatory. So we can say that we are both user and regulator of nuclear energy of nuclear energy. Next slide, please. So with the creation of independent regulatory authority, the Nuclear Regulatory Division of the PNRI, which regulates nuclear and radioactive materials, plus the Center for Device Regulation and Health of FDA, which regulates electrically generated ionizing radiation, will be fused inside the Philippine Atomic Energy Regulatory Authority, and this will synchronize all regulatory activities on ionizing radiation. So, see, FDA po, its regulation is on the X-rays, yung X-rays. So these are the electrically generated ionizing radiation, while NRI is more on the nuclear and radioactive materials. By combining all this, so you just have one agency that will regulate all ionizing radiation activities in the country. Next slide, please. All right. So the difficulty that our licensees have right now is that you have one facility, but you need to get two licenses, especially if you're using nuclear or radioactive material. So, for example, for nuclear medicine, which is an application that is increasing right now in the Philippines for cancer care, you need to get licenses. One from PNRI for the use of the radioactive material, and then they also need to get another license from FDA for the clinical application of the nuclear and radioactive materials. So right now you have more than 20% of radiation facilities need to apply for such two licenses. So they need to go to PNRI and then they need to go to FDA. And this is the on the right lower bottom is the trend in the use of nuclear medicine in the country, and we expect more of these users of nuclear medicine with the Cancer Care Act also already enacted. So we are expecting an increase in this number of licensees, and such most of them are government facilities, and some they have difficulty in managing running licenses at the same time. Next slide, please. So
Ma'am, question lang doon.
yes po.
But if we create we're supportive, but I meant if we create the Philippine Atomic Energy Regulatory Authority, wouldn't FPA still require na may license pa rin? So we'll still have to, no? Or you
Um,
seek to change that?
um, if DOH is
Well,
already
work it
here.
out lang.
Yes,
I mean,
yes. We are working it
I'm just
out, sir.
communicating, I hear you, but nakikita ko rin point yung pareho kasi sa inyo yung permit nyo more of the use of
The
the
equipment, new
technology.
equipment.
Sa kanila
Opo,
more
opo.
of
Opo.
approval that it's for medical use,
Mhm,
'di ba?
mhm,
So
mhm,
but anyway,
Yes po. So meron rin po kasing mga users nung X-rays. So pag ionizing radiation, pati yung mga radiation monitoring rin po, kailangan pa rin nilang kumuha ng license
yeah,
sa
I hear you
PNRI.
naman na
Opo.
if we can simplify and
Yes po, for
sure naman yung
simplification.
hospitals public na safe, 'di ba?
Yes
Why
po.
dalawa pa?
Opo. Okay. So next slide please. Next slide na po. Next slide po. So we aim to modernize and rationalize the current law we have, especially the RA 5207, which was the regulatory law of the Philippines since the 1970s. So this is more legal infrastructures, international conventions and treaties have already been acceded by the Philippines, and we need to be able to modernize the laws that we have in reference to those legal instruments. And again, we need to streamline the regulatory oversight for the licensees that we have, and of course, compliance with global standards and best practices. Next slide, please. So the proposed law, we want to emphasize this law will only cover the safety, security, and safeguards of the use of ionized radiation of nuclear and radioactive materials in the Philippines. So safety, security, and safeguards aspect of the use of such nuclear technology and ionizing radiation technology. We call it as 3Ss, 3Ss. Next slide, please. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yung 3S niyo, wala naman kayong pension na ibibigay.
Wala. Wala po. So these are the international operations and ratified legal instruments. The Philippines had already succeeded since the RA 5207 of 1968. So these are all the conventions and treaties that we need to be able to place inside the modernized Philatom Regulatory Authority law. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry. So this, we just want also to emphasize to the Senate. So one slide, previous slide, please, on the other conventions and treaties that need urgent ratification in the hopefully in the coming years concerning the nuclear safety, security, and safeguards. And one of them is the Convention on Nuclear Safety, and then the Joint Convention on the Safety again of Spent Fuel Management, and then the Convention on Supplementary Compensation for Nuclear Damage, which concerns civil liability of licensees in case there is nuclear damage or nuclear accidents, and then the Convention on the Suppression of Nuclear Terrorism. So we are, hopefully the Senate will support the urgent ratification of these conventions and treaties. Next slide, please. So these are the nuclear organizations in Asia. Among all ASEAN regions and the near Asia countries that are around the Philippines, only the Philippines is left with a dual mandate organization. So all of the organizations, even in the ASEAN, have already separated their regulatory authority from the promotional authority, since to ensure the general public that the regulator is independent of the promotional body. Next slide, please. So again, just to emphasize that why the Congress must act now is in terms of the higher safety and security, that the Philippines must already have these laws into place with the debate on nuclear regulations, and that the regulator should be free from undue influence and their decision should be made on sound scientific grounds and always in the interest of the general public and not for economic or political reasons. All right. So to emphasize further that we need a unified regulatory framework so that our licensees will have a more comprehensive, unified, and streamlined regulation for the use of such ionizing radiation in the Philippines, and able to fulfill our international commitment to the relevant international instruments that we have acceded to. Next slide, please. So transitory provision, the development, promotion, and research will remain at PNRI, and only its regulatory functions will be transferred to PhilAtом, and as well as for the FDA CDRR-HR, only the regulation of non-ionizing radiation remains with the FDA. So, for example, for visible light below, it belongs to FDA, to still with FDA. Only the X-ray part will be only the division concerning the X-ray part will move to the PhilAtом. Next slide, please. For the financial resources, all assets of PNRI, NRD, and the other division with the FDA will be transferred to the PhilAtom, and we are proposing that other sources of funds for the financial independence of our of the regulatory authority, so we can get still from the government, from the GAA, and fees recovered from licensing and regulatory services, as well as contributions and donations in cash or kind from local or foreign sources, provided that there is no conflict of interest. Next slide, please. And this is the proposed organizational structure. The full APO will be headed by a director general, and you have 4 other Deputy Director General with a total number of now to be around 217 regulators. Currently, we only have 30 regulators from the PNRI, and then only 16 from the FDA. So the total count is 46. So we need to have approximately 150 more regulators to be inside the PhilAtom. Next slide, please.
And that will have the effect na mapabilis din yung mga approvals.
Yes po,
Kasi
yes
isang
po, yes
complaint sa
po.
FDA yun na
Yes po.
ang tagal ng
Opo,
approvals.
opo. So these are the regulatory functions that are explained in the PhilAtom bill. Next slide, please. And the proposed office location, probably in the first 3 years, of course, there will be renting a office building or space for rent, but permanent first office location will be at BCDA Clark, Pampanga. And next slide, please. So for the legislative status of this bill, we have support from the 19th Congress in the House of Representatives, and there is a House of Representatives already final approved version, which has gone through the third reading already. And here in Senate, we have three bills which are in support of this PhilAtom bill. So just a list of all of the
So, Director, you're happy with the final version of, I mean, you don't have to answer that kasi if you're not happy, baka magalit ka sa your house. What I meant by that question, what I meant by that question, if you can talk to our ComSec later on, because diba, the closer our bill is to theirs, the faster.
yes.
So kung may ibang provision doon na unacceptable, let us know. Pero kung lahat naman pretty good, diba, then we can speed it up.
Yes,
I won't put you
Senator.
on the spot.
Yes,
Atomic
Senator.
bomb yun.
Oh. Yes, Senator. Okay, so this is the final approved version in the House Bill 9293. And then you have, next slide, please. And then the Senate bills filed. We have the titles and the proponents of the Senate bills. Next slide, please. Okay, so then again, we would also like to emphasize that the PhilAtom bill will not only regulate an incoming nuclear power plant, but it will also regulate all other existing facilities that we have, both medical and industrial facilities that we have, not only in PNRI, but also all other facilities in the country that are using nuclear or radioactive materials and ionizing radiation. So nuclear power plant is only one of the licensees that will be benefiting from the bill, but also all these other facilities will be benefiting from the bill. Next slide, please. Okay, and these are the medical devices and the hospital. So for your information, approximately we have around 3,000 licenses already for these medical devices in the hospitals, and we are expecting, of course, a bigger number in the years to come with the use of nuclear medicine and diagnostic imaging using nuclear in the years to come. So, but with now, we all have these facilities right now in the Philippines that is being regulated by both NRI and the FDA. The next slide, please. Next slide, please. Bumalik lang ko. Next slide. And finally, this bill is to promote the safe and responsible use of nuclear energy is a commitment general public. So this bill is not for the licensees, but this is to make our public know that there is a regulator in the government that is making sure that these types of radiation is used safely for them. Yun lang po. Maraming
Siguro
salamat
in
po.
conclusion, I just like to say you know, yes, you have our support, and to the public, ito yung ano lang putting the horse before the cart, no? So dun sa mga may agam-agam, meron pong doubt sa nuclear power plant, nuclear energy. This bill is not to put up one. It's precisely to have the institutional, to have the institution and the right people to be able to assess, di ba? So, para mo sinabing nag-create ka ng Bureau of Fire, hindi mo gusto ng sunog. Gusto mo nga ng mga tao na iwa-warn tayo, mag-i-inspect, mag-prevent, and then if something happens, nandun sila. But, di ba, God forbid na may mangyari. So before we suspend the hearing, um, I'd like to, ano lang, to thank the people who have taken time out aside from you po. May mga frontliners tayo from cities and barangays. No? We have Barangay Chairperson Bobot Guevara from Pasig, Barangay Palitao. Uh, so- Palatio. Sorry, merienda time na kasi. Palatio. Tsaka medyo maano na So, yeah. So, Chairperson Alberto Bobo, take two, Barangay Palatio, Pasay City. He's a second term Pasig City. Barangay Councilor Jean Cruz, Barangay Palatio de Pasig City. Yan, former chairperson siya ng Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office ng kanilang barangay. Barangay Councilor Ben Brillo, DRRMO ng Barangay Katuparan, consultant siya ng Taguig City. First term ngayon as Barangay Councilor. Mr. Saripada Pakasum Jr., Department Head ng DRRMO ng San Juan City. Yan. Mr. Von Villanueva, Department Head ng Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office ng Navotas City. Sir, thank you for being here. Mr. Bryant Merrill Wong, Department Head, Disaster Reduction Management Office, Pasig City. Eto, I didn't pronounce it Wong, ha? Tama na. Tama. Okay. Mr. Marco Pilago, Department Head, Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office ng Pateros, hometown ng aking tatay. And Ms. Sheena Santander, Registered Nurse, Emergency Medical Technician, CDRR MO Nurse 1, Barangay Katuparan, Taguig City. Yan. So thank you for being with us. I hope na-strengthen din yung pananalig that we're all doing something to better our systems. No? At mabuti na abutan nyo ang PHIVOLCS kasi talagang yan ang isang, Director, I'm happy we're tackling this early in an administration. Kasi pag midterm na o pahuli na, mapasaman yung implementation, bahala na yung next di ba? Even dito sa nuclear atomic energy, maganda na maaga nating gagawin. So, if there are no other resource persons who are going to speak, thank you very much. We'll suspend kasi baka may comments yung ibang senator. So I'll have another 30-minute, 1-hour session next week. Pero you don't have to be here. And then we'll do the committee report. So we'll suspend and then let's take a Christmas photo together. So the hearing is hereby suspended. Picture lang kami.
Sit down na lang po kayo. Siya na lang po ako. Sir, mag-just stand na lang po sa dito. Okay, okay, ready po. Okay.